Numbers chapter 33. These are the stages of the people of Yisra'el when they went out of the land of Mitsrayim by their companies, under the leadership of Moshe and Aharon. Moshe wrote down their starting places, stage by stage, by command of Yahweh, and these are their stages according to their starting places. They set out from Ramesses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month. On the day after Pesach, the people of Yisra'el went out triumphantly in the sight of all the Mitsrites, while the Mitsrites were burying all their firstborn, whom Yahweh had struck down among them. On their ells also Yahweh executed judgments. So the people of Yisra'el set out from Ramesses and camped at Sukkoth. And they set out from Sukkoth and camped at Etham, which is on the edge of the wilderness. And they set out from Etham and turned back to Pi-hahiroth, which is east of Ba'al Tsephon, and they camped before Migdol. And they set out from before Hahiroth and passed through the midst of the sea into the wilderness. And they went a 3 days' journey in the wilderness of Etham and camped at Marah. And they set out from Marah and came to Elim. At Elim there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they camped there. And they set out from Elim and camped by the Sea of Reeds. And they set out from the Sea of Reeds and camped in the wilderness of Sin. And they set out from the wilderness of Sin and camped at Dophqah. And they set out from Dophqah and camped at Alush. And they set out from Alush and camped at Rephidim, where there was no water for the people to drink. And they set out from Rephidim and camped in the wilderness of Sinai. And they set out from the wilderness of Sinai and camped at Qibroth Hatseroth. And they set out from Qibroth Hatseroth and camped at Hatseroth. And they set out from Hatseroth and camped at Rithmah. And they set out from Rithmah and camped at Rimmon Perets. And they set out from Rimmon Perets and camped at Livnah. And they set out from Livnah and camped at Rissah. And they set out from Rissah and camped at Qehelathah. And they set out from Qehelathah and camped at Mount Shapher. And they set out from Mount Shapher and camped at Haradah. And they set out from Haradah and camped at Makheloth. And they set out from Makheloth and camped at Tahath. And they set out from Tahath and camped at Terah. And they set out from Terah and camped at Mithkah. And they set out from Mithkah and camped at Hashmonah. And they set out from Hashmonah and camped at Mosroth. And they set out from Mosroth and camped at Beney Ya'aqan. And they set out from Beney Ya'aqan and camped at Hor Haggidgad. And they set out from Hor Haggidgad and camped at Yophathah. And they set out from Yophathah and camped at Avronah. And they set out from Avronah and camped at Etsyon Gever. And they set out from Etsyon Gever and camped in the wilderness of Sin, that is Kadesh. And they set out from Kadesh and camped at Mount Hor, on the edge of the land of Edom. And Aharon the Cohen went up to Mount Hor at the command of Yahweh, and died there in the 40th year after the people of Israel had come out of the land of Mitsrayim, on the first day of the 5th month. And Aharon was 123 years old when he died on Mount Hor. And the Canaanite, the king of Arad, who lived in the Negev in the land of Canaan, heard of the coming of the people of Israel. And they set out from Mount Hor and camped at Salmonah. And they set out from Salmonah and camped at Punon. And they set out from Punon and camped at Ovoth. And they set out from Ovoth and camped at Ai-ha-Avrim in the territory of Moab. And they set out from Ayim and camped at Devon-Gad. And they set out from Devon-Gad and camped at Almon Divlathaimah. And they set out from Almon Divlathaimah and camped in the mountains of Avarim before Nevo. And they set out from the mountains of Avarim and camped in the plains of Moab by the Yarden at Jericho. They camped by the Yarden from Ba'ath Yeshemoth as far as Avel Hashatim in the plains of Moab. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe in the plains of Moab by the Yarden at Jericho, saying,
Speak to the people of Yisra'el and say to them, when you pass over the Ardain into the land of Canaan, then you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you, and destroy all their figured stones, and destroy all their metal images, and demolish all their high places. And you shall take possession of the land and settle in it, for I have given the land to you to possess it. You shall inherit the land by lot according to your clans. To a large tribe you shall give a large inheritance, and to a small tribe you shall give a small inheritance. Wherever the lot falls for anyone, that shall be his. According to the tribes of your fathers you shall inherit. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then those of them whom you let remain shall be as barbs in your eyes and thorns in your sides, and they shall trouble you in the land where you dwell. And I will do to you as I thought to do to them.
Amen.